大家好，我是迎新，
我是安琪。
今天我们要讲800，是一期很有难度的节目，因为我们俩还都没有机会看过800，所以我们今天是要硬聊，
尬聊是吗？
今天是一期特别节目，因为我们今天要出外景了。
终于要出外景了。
你是很想出外景吗？
就大家可能看着沙发也看腻了吧。我今天要去采访我的老板 Steve， 他深度参与了800的声音制作，所以今天都是干货哦，很干的那种。现在就跟我一起出发吧。
A little longer than a few minutes later.
我已经到我们工作室啦，现在去找一下 Steve 在哪儿。这些都是我老板得过的一些奖项。来摸一下这个戈雅头。Hola Steve。
你好，欢迎来到我们的工作室。My name is Steve Miller, also known as Dami. I was the supervising sound effects editor and one of the re-recording mixers on Babai. I worked always under the sound design of Fukang, and we actually started working on the film prior to filming. We started working on Babai like maybe even end of 2017, beginning of 2018. The idea behind Babai, I think like from a visual point of view as well, is to really put the viewer in the war zone, you know, along with the soldiers. So from the beginning, the approach with the sound was to try and make it as exciting as possible, obviously, but also kind of as realistic as possible. The key aspects of like making that happen was to record authentic period weapons, which they actually used in the real battle. We located and we recorded weapons from that period of time, the actual weapons which both the Chinese and the Japanese armies used. And to be able to do that and to make it as authentic as possible, the other key thing was to use live ammunition, you know, real bullets. Because when you fire a weapon with blanks, the sound is very different to how it sounds when you fire with live ammunition, just because of the reality of when you fire a gun, the metal impact, you know, of the bullet being kind of propulsed from the weapon at a very high speed. The metal kind of impact is something that you can only achieve by actually recording, you know, a real gunshot. So to be able to do that, we looked to Spain, where I'm based, where my studio is based. We managed to find a Spanish armorer who was able to help us, first of all, locate the weapons we wanted to record. So we had a list of weapons, obviously, from the production team, which they knew, you know, were used in the real battle, and then which we used as a guide to locate those weapons. We found those weapons and the corresponding ammunition, and then we needed this armorer because he has a special kind of license to be able to fire, you know, live ammunition in Spain. So Fukang and the team from Beijing, they flew out to Spain and in Catalonia and in the northeast of the country. We went to a hunting ground where we were able, through the armorer's license, we were able to fire the weapons using live ammunition. And yeah, it was pretty exciting. I remember the first weapon we recorded was the Mosin Nagin, the sniper rifle. I remember the first gunshot, the sound they made was like really, you realize why we were doing this. I think it's the kind of sound that you can only get from a real gunshot. So we recorded all of the weapons which appear in the film. We recorded the different rifles, the revolvers, the pistols, the semi-automatic machine guns, the ones which are kind of held like this by someone, and the kind of heavy machine guns which are kind of, you know, where someone sits down with a kind of huge tripod. And another important aspect of those recording sessions was to record the bullet impacts as well. The production company, who maybe with discussions with them, they'd obviously, you know, interviewed a lot of soldiers, and they had military experts. And I think a lot of them kind of told stories about how when you're in a battle and you're fighting, the thing that really kind of impacts you and kind of maybe scares you, and the most frightening aspect of isn't the gunshots that you're hearing kind of like maybe from a distance, but the sound of the impacts, which are kind of impacting maybe, you know, 20 centimeters from you into a wall. And so we wanted to kind of recreate that feeling, you know, of these impacts, these kind of like life-threatening bullets impacting all around. So there was a lot of impacts, a lot of different materials. We recorded bullet impacts in concrete, in different types of metal, glass, dirt. We had a dead pig, a Jew, and we recorded the bullet impacts into the pig to imitate, human flesh. We had the pig covered in different types of clothing to imitate the different kinds of, body impacts, which depending on the kind of clothing the soldier is wearing, it would make a slightly different sound. Yeah, it was, it was an intense few days, but really productive. And all of those recordings, as I said, every impact and gunshot that you hear in Babai, has come from those recording sessions. So I think the result kind of really warrants the kind of reasoning, the thinking behind doing those recordings in the first place. So after those gun recording sessions, there was a process of editing and mastering, because we recorded the gunfire with 18 different microphones. And so we had a combination of different condenser and dynamic microphones, and a combination of different recorded medium, like some digital recordings, some on analog tape, on Nagra. So there was a process of combining the different channels and choosing the best combination for each weapon. And so there was a process of mastering, and I basically mixed and mastered down the gun recordings into 3 kind of groups. So each edited, mastered gunshot has 3 layers to it, like a very close kind of onset layer, which is for the very close kind of initial firing, and then the second layer, which is more the body of the sound. So this is like, maybe you're talking about how a gun would sound from maybe 1 meter away. And then we had like a tail layer, which those microphones were maybe 10 meters away, to give a kind of feeling of distance, and how the gunshot reverberates. Another very interesting aspect of gunfire isn't so much the initial impact, but the decay in the tail of the gunshot, and how it interacts with the environment. And so then there was like a process of several months of sound effects editing and background sound, ambience editing. This film obviously is Dolby Atmos. This is something that we took into account from the very beginning. We knew it was going to be a Dolby Atmos feature, and we knew as well that given the kind of subject matter and given the way it was to be shot, and knowing that we would be, maybe in a battle inside the warehouse, in the middle of a battle with the battle kind of all around us, and, maybe you've got some Chinese soldiers with Japanese soldiers coming in through an open window here, some others fighting their way up through some stairs. We knew that it was really going to give us a lot of artistic license to really use the Dolby Atmos format. I flew out to Beijing for this film. All of the sound effects pre-mixing was done on the final dub stage, to really be able to be sure that you're going in the right direction and that it's working, that kind of immersive sound design. So yeah, this was a long process, because the film obviously has some really big set-piece action sequences where we have a lot of tracks and a lot of objects, just to be able to kind of get all that sound working together and to hear things clearly and not miss details. Really needs a lot of pre-mixing. You just think about the quantity of like gunshots and bullet impacts and explosions, and then obviously there's a huge amount of work carried out by Fu Kang and the dialogue team to get all that working together with the music. It's a complicated mix, so really the pre-mixing was kind of fundamental, and then the final mixing as well was a long process with a lot of input from Tiger from Guangzhou.
His English name is Tiger.
Yeah.
Okay.
We call him Tiger. Tiger he's a director who is really interested and attaches importance to the sound, and I think he's someone who really understands how sound can be used, to tell your story. So he was very involved in the mix, and he was very hard to please, but in a good way, because he really wanted excellence, and he really wanted to achieve that kind of realistic, put the audience in the battle with the soldiers kind of feel. So as I mentioned, the film has a number of like set-piece action sequences, and I think one of the most worth mentioning scenes is the raising the flag scene, where the Japanese fighter planes attack the Chinese soldiers from the air. So this is a sequence which really kind of demonstrates and utilizes the power of Dolby Atmos, and all of the kind of sound relating to the airplanes was put into objects and was mixed exclusively in the Dolby Atmos. So also in the sequence, an important sound is the kind of warning siren, which kind of starts the sequence, and then kind of advises the Chinese soldiers that there's an imminent air attack. To give this also a kind of realistic feel, we got hold of an authentic World War II air raid siren of the exact type they used to use at the time of the Sihang warehouse incident. We found one in China, and we brought it into the studio, and whilst we were there pre-mixing, we recorded. Obviously a siren has a kind of like an emotional aspect to it that starts low on a low pitch and a low sound volume, and obviously can increase and become more urgent and louder in volume and have an increasing pitch. And that kind of rising pitch also raises and increases the tension, of any given moment. So we recorded and edited the siren in a way to kind of have rising tension each time that the fighter planes flew in to attack and fire on the Chinese soldiers. So during that sequence, the siren never stops, and maybe it increases and lowers in volume depending on the moment, but the kind of the pitch and the volume of it accompanies the action we're seeing, and then, not to give any spoilers, but at the end when something happens, that particular fight, battle finishes, the siren also accompanies the emotional finishing of that sequence. So as I said previously, so the sound effects sessions for Babai are pretty big. We needed a HDX3 just to play back the sound effects tracks, not including Foley, dialogue, music or anything else. And yeah, this is really due to the complexity of the sequences and also due to the needs in the mixing to have real control over the different elements and to be able to kind of quickly make modifications following Tiger's and Fukang's indications. So yeah, this is an example of one of the sessions. This is the session for the raising the flag scene. So I think you get an idea just scrolling down of the quantity of tracks and the complexity of the session. We can play back a bit of the sequence that we've mentioned earlier to have an idea about the use of objects in kind of really creating this immersive, Dolby Atmos experience. The green balls are the objects and the movement. You can hear the siren. You get an idea about the use of Dolby Atmos. Dolby Atmos is designed for this kind of sequence, where you can have the airplanes on top of the audience and circling them. It really puts you there with the action. So yeah, not only the gunfire, but also the airplanes, the Zeppelin, the vehicles, the jeeps, the motorbikes. All of the sound you hear in the film are recordings of authentic planes, vehicles, etc. from the period. I think Babai really, achieves this aim of putting the spectator with the soldiers and to kind of try and get people to understand now in this age that these kind of conflicts don't exist anymore, in the same way. What that experience must have been like, for the Chinese soldiers, trapped in that warehouse. And for me personally, I think is really, a great film. I think it's really a film that people should see, especially perhaps the younger generation in China, for them to have an understanding, about what happened. From a technical point of view, from a professional point of view, I think is really close to perfection, not just speaking about the sound, but speaking about, all aspects, the photography, the set design, the visual effects, really everyone has kind of pulled out all the stops to kind of trying to help Tiger, realize his vision. And I think that, it's been achieved.
¿Y quieres hablar algo en chino?
所以我很高兴 在北京做这个电影，我希望你们喜欢这个电影，就把来大方吧，
票房大卖，
就把来票房大卖，谢谢。
好了，我又回来了。
我听完 Steve 讲了，我觉得声音制作真的很有趣，就是没有想到那个800里的枪声是在西班牙录制的，很有意思，而且都是用真枪。
对，就是还是为了最大化的模拟那个真实的效果。
然后就是那个杜比声音的设计，我觉得看800真的要去电影院里面看，能有一种身临其境的感觉。
对，就是每一部电影背后各种微小的细节都是有很大一个团队花了很多心血设计出来的，所以还是呼吁大家去电影院看电影，才能完全的感受到背后的工作人员的劳动成果。
对，要在电影院里感受那种飞机在你头顶上飞过的感觉。然后今天其实对我来说有一个热知识，就是原来管虎导演叫 Tiger。
还挺有逻辑的嘛，
就是还挺像一个导演的名字的，一个很难被取悦的 Tiger。